In a world where the line between life and death blurs, we often find ourselves grappling with the unthinkable. Welcome to He's Dead, a haunting tale that explores the aftermath of loss and the chilling secrets that can emerge from beyond the grave. As we unravel this story, prepare yourself for a journey filled with twists and unsettling revelations. Are you ready to confront the darkness? He's dead. I thought, finally realizing it as I stood over his body. My mind raced, but the truth was undeniable. Josh was gone. What am I going to do? The truth was, I had no idea. Murder was a serious charge. I'd watched enough true crime documentaries to know how this worked. The killer always gets caught, no matter what. And now I was the killer. God, I'm a killer. I looked around. We were in a small clearing in the woods east of my house, a place nobody ever went. That was partly why we came here, to do whatever we wanted. Stupid challenges, games, that sort of thing. Stuff for laughs. But I wasn't laughing, and Josh certainly wasn't either. I looked back down at his body. It was awful. His clothes were torn and tattered, and his face was split open in a grotesque way, the left side of his head mangled beyond recognition. You'd have to squint hard to even lie to yourself that it looked remotely human. I felt another pang of adrenaline. I need to be smart. I need to make this go away. I have to. I moved to my left. There was a ditch here about 2 meters deep, shallow on one side but rocky on the other. I glanced back at Josh's bike and started piecing a story together. Maybe he was riding his bike down here, got distracted by something, and hit these sharp rocks. Along the shallow side of the ditch, there was a bit where the rim turned upward, like a ramp. Okay, he went along here, hit the ramp, got distracted, and crashed into the rocks. It was the only thing I could think of. Maybe the sharp rocks had slit his face like that. It might be a little far-fetched, but it was the best I could come up with. I took a deep breath and lifted Josh. He was heavier than I thought, and I almost slipped in the wet dirt as I hoisted him over my shoulder and carefully placed him in the ditch. I tried to make it look like he'd been crawling away. He probably wouldn't have died straight away. Satisfied with the placement, I turned my attention to the bike. It was still pristine as we'd just leaned them against a tree earlier. That wasn't going to work. It needed to look damaged. I grabbed the bike and slowly rolled it down the muddy path, then lifted it and threw it into the rocks. I picked it up and did it again. That looks all right. I left the bike where it was. It was already in a good spot, and it would look more authentic if I didn't pose it. The last thing I did was take off my jacket, stained with blood, and hoisted it under my arm. I placed it on the seat of my bike and, after one last look back, rode home. I left Josh there and, with him, a little bit of myself, the aftermath. I unlocked the front door of my house and hurried inside. I ran up to my room and hid the bloodied coat under my bed. I'd figure out what to do with it later. I tried to dull my brain with a shooter game, barely paying attention. The rain outside was a small mercy. Maybe it would wash some evidence away. My mom came home from work soon after. I plastered a smile on my face and went to meet her at the door. "Hello, Dan," she called from the hallway. "Hey, Mom," I said, lingering in the doorway, arms crossed. "Did you have fun with Josh today?" she asked, hanging up her coat. Yeah, I did. Had to come home a bit early, though. He said he needed to do something." "Oh, well, I'm sure it was important. Anyway, it's the holidays now. You could always hang out with him tomorrow." "Yeah," I said, my smile slowly fading. The nightmare. That night, every time I closed my eyes, I saw the ditch etched into my mind, the mangled roots, the mangled bike, the mangled body. I got maybe half an hour of sleep before my alarm jolted me awake at 5 a.m. I immediately remembered Josh's face, twisted and warped. I felt like a stranger in my own skin. The air was suffocating. The rooms in my house felt far larger than I'd ever noticed, and they had no right to be. Large and empty. Nothing felt right. The thought of Josh's parents sitting there, worry building, waiting anxiously for a boy who would never come back, their only son, made me feel sick. My mom must have noticed something was off. She kept giving me weird looks all morning, occasional glances. The pressure kept building and building until, at about 1 p.m., there was a knock on the door. My mom answered it. As I sat in the living room, head in my hands, I could hear the man at the door speaking. His words were muffled but clear enough. Yes. No, he didn't. His parents haven't seen him. If we could just... Dan, my mum said, opening the door and letting the man into the room. This man here just needs to ask you some questions. It's about Josh. I bottled everything down, swallowed, and spoke as clearly as I could, maybe a little too quickly. Josh? I looked at the officer. He had a warm, kind expression, but with a tinge of unease. He was about to break the news. I'm not supposed to know yet. What's happened to him? I chuckled slightly. Has he gotten himself into more trouble? The officer shifted in his seat. Listen, Dan, Josh hasn't been seen since yesterday morning. We've spoken to his mother, and she says she last saw him when he went out with you. That means you might have been the last person to see him. I stared at the name tag on his uniform, not really focusing on it. Look, I know it's a lot to handle right now, and I understand that you two were close, but do you think we could just ask you some questions? I told him we went into the woods, though I lied about where exactly. I said that after a little while of just chilling out, Josh had gone further in, and I'd turned around and gone home. The officer nodded comfortingly, his smile never reaching his eyes. The return. About a week later, I got a knock on the door. As I peered through the window, my blood ran cold. Josh was standing outside, grinning. I unlocked the door, and there he was, clean, healthy, and very much alive. Hey. I thought we were going back out to the woods today, he said, pushing past me. I didn't know what to think. I followed him outside, and we rode our bikes into town. He acted like nothing had happened, but something was off. His grin never faded, and his behavior was unsettling. We stopped at a chip shop and then went to the park. As we ate, Josh mentioned something about camping the previous week, a trip I had no memory of. He even showed me a text on my phone that I didn't remember sending. Mate, why do you never invite me to these things? Lol, anyway, hope you have fun, bro. I chuckled nervously, but my stomach churned. The text was from me, but I had no recollection of sending it. The truth. I couldn't take it anymore. I rode back to the woods, to the ditch where I'd left Josh's body. It was still there, rotting and exactly as I'd left it. So, what the hell is the Josh I was just eating chips with? As I stood there, Josh appeared behind me. Don't do that, he said, his voice deep and raspy. You're not going to tell the police anything. I'll be back up here in a bit to sort all of this out. What are you? I asked, my voice trembling. You let me live my life and I'll let you live yours. We won't talk about this again. Before I could respond, he was gone. The end. I don't know what Josh is or if he's even real, but I do know one thing. I'll never be free of what I did. And maybe that's the real punishment. Thank you for joining us on this unsettling journey through He's Dead. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more chilling tales that delve into the unknown. Remember, sometimes the dead have more to say than we realize. Until next time, stay curious and cautious.